Oh, we got you looking here. What's up, everybody? Welcome to the show. We got a good one for you tonight. We did have a last minute cancellation for the guest, so we're going to have him on in about 2 weeks. Excited about that one. But the question we're going to be talking about today is:
Seriously.
Are you a mile wide, but an inch deep? Probably a little bit who I was a few years back. Um, that being said, show sponsor none other than Virtue Alliance. Check us out, virtuehealthalliance.com. Craig, what do we got for these guys today?
Oh my God. Well, since we got a guest who failed to attend, how about the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I like it.
Yeah. Hey, brokers need to hear the truth from
Asked
somebody.
and answered. Some people always say, you want to, at least you know you stand with me. You ask me a question, I answer it.
That's it,
There's
man.
no dancing around it.
Yeah. So let's start with what level of trust can you really sell? Provocative. What do I mean by that? Well, I mean, look, everybody sells confidence and certainty in what you're saying. You can do what you say you're going to do. You're going to finish what you start, and etc. So the question is, what level of trust can you sell? So I can tell you a story about this New Jersey broker I met, God, 5 years ago. He shall remain nameless, but he was the guy. He showed up to this networking mastermind group, and he had what he thought was a lot of experience, but it turned out that he just needed exposure to other brokers, other ideas, other experiences, different skill levels. And he realized that, you know what, there's a whole nother world above 50 employees that he didn't realize, because what had happened in his business, he started from scratch. And then within a couple of years, he was outperforming the guy whose agency he worked at. And all that guy did was sell 2 to 50. And so he thought that was the universe of the world. And so, sure, he wanted to sell a 200-man group, but he just assumed that, well, there's just no way. I mean, that's just out of my reach. So what level of trust can you sell? That's when I say that, what I mean is, if you're used to selling to 40-man groups, can you really sell a 400-man group? That's something that you have to look at yourself objectively and determine if that's really possible based on where you're at today, which is why you need coaching. You need exposure to people who actually produce, not just talk about, you don't need professors, you need practitioners.
Yeah, look, you don't know what you don't know. That's one of the stages of unconscious competence is like, you don't know what you don't know. And, you know, I had thought I was on top of the world. I remember going to the conference thinking I was a big dog. And shortly after, somebody had stood up and said, yeah, I'm tired of selling these small accounts. And I said, oh, that's me. I'm tired of this. And he goes, I'm tired of selling these groups. I want to sell 500 or 1,000 life groups. And I'm like, holy shit. What the hell? I'm thinking I want to sell groups over 100 or over 75,
Yeah.
things like that. And this guy's, I'm done with selling 100 live groups. And right away, it just put me in my place. And I'm like, oh, I'm in the right place. I'm a nobody. Then shortly after that, somebody goes, yeah, we did, we're doing $1 million in, revenue last year or something like that. And I'm just like mind blown, because all I had saw was my boss. I remember going to a poker game, funny enough, and it was a bunch of brokers held by a GA in town. And I was like, who's the most successful, who's the biggest? And there was only one guy that was over 1 million in revenue. And I'm like, I gotta figure out what the hell that guy's doing. And it just, what you were not when you're not exposed to, you don't realize. I mean, I don't know, you can't always conceptualize it in your head. Fortunately,
Yeah.
some of you new younger guys are going swinging for the fences, which is nice. Just hit some singles while you go along. But yeah, you don't know what you don't know.
Yeah, well, that's why we talk about it all the time. There are no rules. But it's easy to say, but it's a hard message to actually understand and live, right? Because what happens is everybody's got this critic that lives inside their head, and you start, the old tapes start showing up as soon as you want to try and stretch yourself, make yourself stressful. That's why, I've said many times, you have to become comfortable having uncomfortable conversations, because it's the only way you're going to stretch yourself. And what you find out, it's like when you're a kid and you go to the Magic Mountain, right? And you're going to go and you're going to ride some crazy ride, right? And you're scared to death, but you do it. And I'll bet that 9 out of 10 people listening, as soon as you got off that ride, you were running to the line to get back in it to do it again. And just 30 minutes before, you were scared to death, and your friend or your parents had to talk you into it. And now look at you. And guess what? Life is exactly that way. It's Reality isn't nearly as scary as we think that we make it in our brain. And that's the fun part about this business, because let's face it, let's look at today. It's 2022. How has it changed since I got in here when PPOs just started? PCS was the first and only drug card. HMOs weren't even out there yet. And, it was the early days. Now we got, let's see, Amazon, Walmart, CVS, Walgreens, Optum, several dozen hospital systems looking at coming out with their own commercial products. You got all the bukas, you got the regionals, you got faith-based programs. Oh, hell, you don't even need group insurance. You got ICRAs, you got the exchanges at the state level, you got the exchanges at the federal level. I mean, honestly, all you got to do is get in the way of that stuff as a broker, and you can connect buyers with sellers and make a little money. Now, having said that, making a little money is, that's underwhelming. You got a job. And for those of you who don't know what job stands for, it means just over broke. So if you want to commit to doing the things that unsuccessful people won't do, you can become successful. The formula is that simple. So you need to be more than a mile wide and an inch deep. What did John mean by that at the onset of the show? Well, the reality is most brokers are a mile wide and an inch deep. What does that mean? Well, my goodness, you got products coming out the wazoo. I mean, everything under the sun. And I don't need to go through the list. That could take 10 minutes. And so you got all these products, but guess what? You don't have anybody to tell it to. You got a handful of clients, but you don't have enough prospects. You don't have enough prospects because you may not do any marketing. And so at the end of the day, we have lots and lots of conversations about marketing and then sales, right? You don't need more product knowledge if you have nobody to tell it to. You need more marketing experience and sales training so that when you do get prospects, you stand a greater likelihood of closing them rather than sounding like everybody else who also is a mile wide and an inch deep. What do you think, John?
Yeah, we make mistakes and do the wrong thing.
We
When I
focus
was
on the wrong stuff. We major
yeah,
in minor things.
well, what do you say? Your
In
broker
minor
majors
things.
in minor things.
Yeah.
I remember I used that a line, stole that from you, used it at a CFO event talking about self-funding. Is the advisor focuses on getting the admin costs down, getting the stop loss costs down, which is 15% of the overall spend.
Yeah.
Um, and it's just you looking down, but that's all we knew. I mean, look, when I was doing it, I didn't know shit either. I just happened to get lucky and meet some guy who was doing self-funded and said, "Hey, I'm going to do that. That's how I'm going to be different from 50, 60-year-old guys in the business. And that's why people are going to want to talk to me." But I mean, God, going and peddling the same stuff over and over, or talking about how to actually lower healthcare costs outside of shopping carriers and plan designs and HRAs, there was nothing. So if you didn't do self-funding, what were you really going to talk about? You're just hunting for people that are unhappy, right? And hope that the
Yeah.
broker falls asleep and falls asleep at the wheel, basically.
And it's really easy to, just get in the habit of doing what you've always done, but that just gets you the results you've always gotten. So if you want to do something different, I was at lunch yesterday with a fella who sold his agent. I mean, these guys were cutting edge 20 years ago. I mean, they were really, really, really sharp. Sold their agency for multi 8 figures. I suppose he's bored, so he's back in the industry, and he's got a new, cooler version of a system that they created 20 years ago to use today with newer, updated version, if you will. But it was fascinating. I said, "So what's the value proposition?" And the conclusion, of course, is what almost the conclusion is with almost every broker. And it was, that we can save you money, probably 20 to 30% on your healthcare budget. And I said, can I just share with you my experience having worked in the jumbo market the last 4 years? I don't believe that there's a CHRO out there that actually cares anything about saving money. And if you talk like that, they're going to automatically dismiss you as being the same as everybody else. But if you want to be distinctive, you could consider talking about this, that, and the other thing. And I spelled it out to him and he went, wow, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I could see how HR people would, that sounds a lot better than what I'm used to saying. And so that just happens to everybody. We get caught in that trap. So, one of the things John has told everybody repeatedly, record your presentations. Put on your phone, record it, listen to yourself, and then critique yourself and say, wow, I just like brushed right over that, or I didn't actually get them to share with me a single problem that they had. I didn't ask them this question or that question. I didn't cover this. And you can only do that if you critique yourself, record yourself. Your Zoom calls, hey, they record, guys, gals. Save them, record, watch them.
Yeah, easy
Yeah.
enough with Zoom. I mean, I'll
Yeah.
I'll say go anybody who's still trying to do Zoom meetings. I mean, I would push for in-person meetings. The close ratio is going to go up dramatically. I would say at least double. Um, some people are like, well, what do I do? This, that, or the other, and I'm like, just show up there, even if it's Zoom. Just show up. Guy says, oh, I thought it was on Zoom. No, it wasn't. It was a mistake. What's he going to do? Say leave? Just show up there. You got to get people in person right now. If you're watching, let us know where you're watching in from. Got some people on YouTube, Facebook, LinkedIn. Somebody says CHRO. What is that, Craig?
That is a chief human resource officer. And thus we know you're now exposed, you're naked on the show, right? So you don't know what a CHRO is. That means you've probably not sold anybody over 1,000 employees. Nothing wrong with that. But see, this is part of the story of what level of trust can you sell, right? So is it possible that based on your systems, your people, your experience, that you can walk into, if you typically sell 40 to 75 man groups, can you walk into a 400 to a 750 man group and give them the confidence and certainty that you, your resources, your team, your unique insights and experience can solve problems for them that they've never thought of, that they didn't anticipate, that no one's ever questioned them about, or no one's challenged them about? Or do you just go and you talk about features and benefits and deductibles and HSAs, and you start to see the disparity in performance and results. And when John went to that poker game years ago, guess what? He couldn't go in on all the hands he wanted to go in on, even though he was a better poker player, because he didn't have the bank, right? And so what do I mean by the bank? Well, he didn't have enough money because he didn't make enough money, because he didn't sell enough cases, because he didn't work in large enough groups to generate higher revenue. And he was stuck thinking that the world evolved around 2 to 50 man groups, only to discover 5 years later, when he's making 7 figures a year, that, oh my God, it's even easier than I thought. And 200 man groups put on their pants the same way as 20 man groups. And so it's really about, how do we expose ourselves to the truth, find out about it from somebody who doesn't, who's aligned with you, who's not trying to convince you to go, oh no, boy, 75 man group, that's really big for this agency. It's just not true. So we're here trying to tell you the truth.
Yeah, I mean the revenue thing is fun. It's interesting. I know a lot of guys out there. They're not living in Jersey or Southern California like you, where cost of living is through the roof now.
I just filled my
Everything.
gas tank yesterday. It was $108, John.
Yeah,
$5.33 a gallon.
it happens
Thank
when you
you,
have
Governor
an A
Newsom.
an Aston Martin truck. I don't think you I'm surprised you even looked at it, knowing you. It
I was
doesn't it
shocked. I'm
doesn't
like, it's $100 to fill my gas tank. I mean,
Yeah, look, shit, before this happened, when I had the Maserati in California, it was $93 to fill it up. It had a big gas tank
it
that
must have had a
cost.
big gas tank.
It
Yeah.
it did, it took a lot, but, yeah, I mean, the reality was when it I remember when I, joined and paid for your event and stuff, that revenue seems like a lot because remember I started, I go, "Well, if I could sell 60,000 in business for 5 years, that'd be 300 grand. I give the agency gets 50%, I'll be making 150 grand in 5 years." That was my goal, right?
Yeah.
But I only knew what I knew because when I started with the guy, he was 41, his book was like 300. We doubled it while I was there in a couple of years, and, I'm thinking, "Shit, I'll be single, this guy's married with kids, I'll be living good."
Yeah, yeah.
But,
Yeah.
the problem was I didn't know this whole 'nother level exists. I thought that's enough. You talk to guys,
You
we sit
hadn't
here.
read any of the books yet that will tell you that your net worth is probably a reflection of the 5 people you hang around the most. Man, let me tell you, that is mind-blowing. But once you live it, you go, "Man, I gotta hang around a higher class of loser."
Yeah, yeah, I mean,
When you're at the bottom.
you think you're at the top, you think it's just this great book, and you realize I remember going to the conference realizing like, "Oh, these brokers are just fucking losers." Excuse my language. But they're nobody compared to real guys in this industry, and I was like, "You know what? There's this whole 'nother world out there."
Yeah.
I was making a couple 100 grand, you fast forward, and it's a lot more than that. You add a 0 to that.
Hey,
Um
so here's a question. You said something really smart, right? You're like, well, I was looking, I was, if I did, this much and then 50%, you were actually contemplating what your numbers are, right? And that's one of the things that brokers need to know. Guys, ladies, you're self-employed carrying a business card under the roof of whomever you work with. I don't care if it's a big box chain store. They don't, you're a broker with your own book of business and you get to decide what you sell, which vendors you use. And so for all intents and purposes, I don't care what size firm you're at, you're self-employed. And so if that's the case, my goodness, we all know the universal problem is lack of prospects. And so how do you solve that? Well, you got to have a marketing budget. Well, how do you have a marketing budget? Well, you got to know your numbers. So what are your numbers? The most important one to
Shit,
me is what's the
beg,
lifetime
or
value?
steal. Borrow, beg, or steal the money. When
Yeah, yeah.
I started, I had no money. There was no book coming in. I think it was 20 grand when I, converted over myself, and I just knew I already saw, putting money in marketing, that's how you're gonna get cases, or else I'm never gonna get in front of everybody. And, you fast forward, I've just continuously done it even when things are bad, right? During COVID, during this, during, the past 2 years, you cut back a little bit, go, "Oh, let me cut back just in case this and that." It's like, you know what? I was like, "Nah, let's just keep our foot on the, gas on the pedal." Because a lot of guys, in your head, you're like, "Oh, it's 5 grand a month. It's a lot of money." Well, it's 60 grand a year. After taxes, it's gonna be in the top bracket. What are they gonna take? Half of it? So $35,000 it's costing you. $35,000 a year for X amount of leads. You can't close anything, then yeah,
Keep
you should
going.
be
Keep
marketing.
going. What's $35,000
Yeah,
if you're shopping 50 to 500 man groups, 50 to
yeah,
150 man groups? What is that, John? Two cases a year? I don't know.
yeah. And back then, let's say I was spending 50, 60 grand. You fast forward to now, and the budget for this show. I mean, Craig, we made 0 money. It was all on future revenue saying, "Look, if we can get in front of more people, we're gonna write business. I can get in front of more people." I didn't know the show was gonna cost over 100 grand a year to run, okay? Hiring marketing coordinators, all these little different things. It's very expensive. But again, like Craig said earlier, you go from making a couple hundred to well over 7 figures. It's only because of the money that was spent on marketing, because you sacrifice it. Instead of putting the 5
Yeah.
grand a month into your lifestyle, I live in a 1,200 square foot apartment right now by choice. Could I buy a $2 million home here? I'm not going to buy it in this market, but could I? Yes. But I always said, you know what? If I take that extra 2 grand a year, or 2 grand a month, because I was living in a 700 square foot apartment in Jersey, right, which was super expensive because it's New Jersey. And I said, you know what, I'll get a 2 bedroom for more space. But it was going to be 2 grand a month, the time, mortgage, taxes, maintenance fees in Jersey. And I said, you know what, let me take the 2 grand and spend it on marketing, and I'll turn it into 5x. And you just kept doing that. It's just flipping, flipping, flipping. Shit. I was watching Patrick David the other day, Craig. I got to find a video. I'll share with you guys. And he talked about, I'm in the flipping game. If I give you $100, I want 200 back in a certain, amount of time.
Yeah.
And he even said, like, flipping, is X amount is only 15 flips or something like that to get to $1 billion when you start with 1 million. So he's trying to become a billionaire. And so the game right now, when you're building your block, is how can I double this? I'm at 200. How do I get to 400? And the answer
Yeah.
usually is more leads, right? You got to be able to close when you get to them, but you just need
Yeah.
more opportunities. The
But
more
yeah,
money you make,
it's two-sided. It's not just marketing, it's also sales training. Because if you go in there with the same exact pitch you use on the 40-man groups, that you're comfortable, you're confident, and you're certain you can sell a 40-man group, but you're nervous, you sound needy, and you don't give any kind of real strategic insights to a 400-man group, and all of a sudden you fold like a lawn chair and they don't buy. So you need sales training too, as well as the marketing. And so 35,000, John would say, you spend 60, it's really cost you 35. What's 35 net? I don't know. So let's say you're at a 35% payout, you got to do 100K to net the 35 to break even. That's one group, maybe two groups, depending on the size you're going after. And so how many leads does it take? How many appointments does it take uh, to charge the fees to ultimately maybe get the BOR to recoup the 35 grand? Well, guess what? If you don't charge fees, it's going to take a lot longer. You
yeah,
know,
I think it's also like looking at taxes now, right? You make more money. I'm looking at is taxes because they just slaughter you. Hence why I'm in Las Vegas and not New Jersey.
or
But
California.
if you're gonna have money, look at it this way: if you're gonna have 100 grand left over at the end of the year, okay, and you're not doing nothing with the money, it's going into the bank, or you're not putting in a strategic investment that's going to earn money. Well, guess what? You just lost whatever it was in taxes because instead of using 100,000 towards marketing, come January 1 of the next year, you're in a 35% bracket. You only got 65,000 next year to use towards marketing because you chose not to use it then, and now you've got to pay taxes. Oh, I'm gonna wait till next year to market. If you've got extra cash flow, like I said, that's just gonna sit there, which most people should have if you've been in the business for a while. Well,
Yeah.
use it strategically because you're getting look at it as you're getting a discount. If you got to pay somebody 100 grand, well, it's really only costing me X because they were going to slaughter me in taxes anyway, right? And you keep
Yeah.
playing the doubles game, the flip game, year over year, and then at some point down the road, it really pops and starts to come in like it did for me last year. I was just talking to Sean in the office. I'm laughing because just a couple of years ago, $5,000 was a lot of money, right? And now your credit card bills are, well over 10,000 a month for things, and it's like, it's all because you kept doing the flips and kept reinvesting into it.
Yeah.
And if you're not growing, that's probably why. There's a restaurant here that's really good in Vegas here, and they're too cheap to put money back into business. They were on bar rescue, right?
Really.
And Taffer goes, look, you've got to put, I think 3 or 4% has to be put aside of revenue, 3 or 4% of revenue to put back into the building and continuously redo the building and seats and all this stuff.
Yeah.
And they refuse to do it. The sound system's horrible. Like a great singer, sound system's horrible. You could just tell it's older, this, that, and the other. And it's because he's not reinvested. And look, it's gotten by it where all the places now are super fancy here in Vegas. I mean, you walk in them, they're unbelievable because the competition's high.
And and
And
and let's talk about reinvestment, right? I used a bar as an example. I'm just going to ask a simple question that I think you should ask yourself. How many conferences do you go to where you show up and you get pitched 18 times by 18 different vendors about why they have the coolest shiny object? Now, if I'm you, because I did that, I went through that phase, I learned, okay, you need to be able to get something out of it that's going to get you new prospects or close business for you. And closing business for you isn't another new shiny object. That isn't what closes business for you. All of your competitors have shiny objects too. So you got to think about, how is this money going to directly increase the velocity of me generating new revenue? And hearing 18 pitches and then flying and staying in a hotel and paying all that overhead for the privilege on top of the conference fee, you gotta. I'm just saying, just ask yourself if that's a good ROI.
Yeah, it's it's good at sometimes. Sometimes, most of the time, it's probably should be spent better elsewhere.
Yeah.
I'm going to this conference
Especially if you
next
got limited cash flow.
I mean, yeah, well, if you have living in cash flow, it's another story. I mean, we're going to the conference next week and they want like $4,000 and I'm like, I look at the agenda and it's a bunch of vendor pitches and it's just complete garbage from what I see. I'm like, I'd rather just spend the money on schmoozing people here. And so we're taking everybody out to dinner and lunches instead of spending it on the conference because it just doesn't make sense. If you want to share below in the comment section what percentage of your revenue you're going to be spending on marketing next year or even a dollar amount, go ahead and put it in the chat. Let's see who's got the balls to do that. 10%, they say, 8 to 12%, call it 10, should be utilized on revenue for marketing.
Hey, somebody asked in the Facebook user group, what are the 3 most pressing problems CHROs faced post-COVID? Question mark. Wouldn't that be a great Google search? Guys, you're going to get a myriad of responses there, depending on the survey, depending on the source, but they're all going to be pretty similar, right? We just made a new slide today. Let me see. There was about 15 different things listed. I only cared about the first 2 because it facilitated my story. Strengthening the economy is public's top concern, followed by cutting healthcare costs and then addressing COVID-19. So the number 1 answer, strengthening the economy. The number 2 answer, reducing healthcare costs. That's from consumers. Now, CHROs, hey, you're going to find a lot of overlap. Do the search, see what it is, and then you'll see a reflection of usually what are the shiny objects that the industry's pushing. So you'll see mental health in there, you'll see primary care in there, you'll see financial wellness, you'll see paying off student loans. It just becomes an echo chamber, but at least you can try to find some unique insights to have a conversation that's out of the norm.
Well, we gave them enough today. What do you think? Be honest with yourself. Don't judge. I know you got that one listed here. We can
Yeah,
wrap it up on that one, guys.
okay. You got to look in the mirror and realize that all the solutions to your problems, they're not outside you. They're inside you. They're staring at you in the mirror. So, Jack Canfield has a great solution. I got received some training from him, became certified in his training program, and he has a formula called E plus R equals O. If you experiences plus your response equals your outcomes. Now the problem is that most of the world is trapped in that formula, and where they're trapped is they don't like the R. They don't like the reaction, the response to the experience, and they don't like the outcome. So what do? Right? They don't like any of it, right? So they complain about the experience. They complain about the outcome. And that's what they focus on, which is outside of themselves, missing the reality that the only thing you can control is your reaction and your response. And that's you looking in the mirror going, when my prospect says this, I could say this next time instead of that. And maybe I'll get a different outcome. So that's what I'm meaning about being honest with yourself. The only thing you can control is your response, the solution staring you in the mirror, if you have the courage to ask yourself, what could I do if I wanted to fix this?
Craig, a couple of years ago, hated HR, wouldn't talk to him, bashed the hell out of him, and then all of a sudden, his tune changed. I said, "What happened?" He said, "Well, I looked in the mirror and I realized if I want to actually sell these large cases, I've got to learn my tone and I've got to work with these people. I can't. I'm costing myself money. I'm losing accounts over this, and turned it around. I mean, that's being honest with yourself.
Yeah. Yeah.
Somebody
I
says,
failed more than anybody. I guarantee you, I've had more pitches and more failures than anybody, but I adapt, I modify, I change, and I overcome. And everybody else can. So, when we're talking to you and we tell you these things, it's not theoretical. We've actually sold group medical cases. I've done it for 35 years. I am Obi-Wan Kenobi, John, Luke Skywalker. So we're here to help you. We're here to help you write business. John's got great options and a heck of a lot of experience.
Yeah, somebody says, "Can you talk about your conference in April?" It's not a conference; it's a sales and marketing boot camp. So it's an invite only. We're looking to introduce new advisors to the virtual health program and can utilize it to write new business, retain business. But, a day and a half of content, we're going to be teaching sales and marketing, some of the stuff that we've used repeatedly on the show
Because it works.
at the event. So guys that haven't seen it, I mean, or need a refresher should be there if you're invited and qualified to come and you're out writing business and hungry. If you're not
You
writing
know how
business,
simple it
not
is, guys? There's a law. It's called the law of reciprocity. So if I scratch your back, you scratch mine. And so this is the reality. John and I have done this for the last 3 years, where we try to make
4.5,
deposits. 3.5? Yeah, okay.
4.5.
4.5. What?
Yeah. Yep.
He's in Vegas. He's probably already started drinking. So I had a philosophy in business. I explained to my kids, I've explained it before on different shows. I'm like, you have to make a deposit before you can ask for a withdrawal. So this show is an example of how we make deposits. We try to help people. We don't ask you for anything, except that when it's time for you to think of that elephant case, you think of me. When it's time to think of a level funded, how to convert fully insured into self-funded, you think of John. When you need a reinsurance competitive quote, you think of John. When you want to talk about and learn about how do I convert fully insured to self-insured and not end up getting fired in less than a year like so many brokers. Well, you can only get that you can't get that by reading a book because the book doesn't have the experience. And so that's why you talk to us, because we can give you the experience to go, you need to be a little more discerning, right? A whole list of shiny objects is great, but it doesn't mean it'll work for that customer. They don't teach you the questions to ask based on the experience of having done this in the past. And since you've never done it, you may not even realize what questions to ask. But if you come at this backwards and go, how could I put in all of the wrong strategies and tactics so that I get fired in less than a year, you'll find that a lot of you are receiving training like that. And so we want to tell you the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
That's it. We'll end it there. Good talk. Thanks for joining us, guys. Next week, do you want to do a show? Because I'll be in Tulum. Maybe show next week.
I'll
May
be in
not. Stay
Pittsburgh.
tuned.
I'll be in
You'll be in
Pittsburgh.
Pittsburgh. No show next week, but stay tuned every week, 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific. Thanks so much for joining us, guys. Happy hunting.
Absolutely.